Hello and most welcome to 1967 of the H series. We will continue gesture and thought. We began in 1964, an article by David Mcneill at the University of Chicago. Chicago.
Chicago.
Chicago. Chicago. Chicago, Chicago. Last episode, we looked into how gestures are not accompaniments or supplements of talk. Rather, they are simultaneous, coexisting, and pointing to the wholeness of the expression. They are non-linear, non-morphic in normal gesticulation. We use the poids, the poids, to show that the gesture poids goes through the whole expression, from the beginning to the end of a sentence. It doesn't have a clear beginning or an end. And it goes through it all. So the poa is a one thing or non-dividable thing. It's very close to global reality, whereas the words are the local reality. The disparate, divided, atomistic. Here they're called morphic. They can be rearranged, whereas the poa cannot be rearranged. It's one thing, a wholeness. This also questions the idea that there are special things in the words that contains meaning. Inside of the words, or hiding somewhere in between the letters. So it's interesting out of many aspects. It puts a big question mark into the idea of dividable meaning, the words individually containing meaning, or that meaning is only is an accumulation of linear piling of words, linear piling of meaning. The Saussurean idea. Saussure, that oddly enough is also mentioned in another way here. I will continue where I left off. And we are now at little something that we call the growth point. Page 4. last paragraph, the growth point. The smallest unit of the imaginary language dialectic is posited to be a growth point. So named because it is theoretically the initial unit of thinking for speaking out, of which a dynamic process of organization emerges. A growth point combines imagery and linguistic categorical content. And the theory is that such a combination initiates cognitive events. Cognitive events. Cognitive events. Events of cognition. Of cognition.
Cognition. Cognitive.
A growth point is an empirically recoverable idea unit inferred from speech gesture synchrony and co-expressiveness. Co-expressiveness. Expressiveness. Oh dear. 4.1. A case study. An example recorded in an experiment offered in part because of its ordinariness is a description by one speaker of a classic Tweety and Sylvester escapade. Sylvester escapade, which went in part as follows. And Tweety Bird runs and gets a bowling ball and drops it down the drain pipe. The drain pipe. Speech was accompanied by a gesture in which the two hands thrust downward at chest level, the palms curved and angled inward and downward, as if curved over the top of a large spherical object. Object. A spherical object. A large spherical object. a large spherical object. At the left bracket, the hands started to move up from the speaker's lap to prepare for the downward thrust. The downward thrust. Then the hands at the very end of drops, held briefly in the curved palm down position, frozen in mid-air, the first underlining. Next was the gesture stroke. The downward thrust itself, timed exactly with it down, bold face. Movement proper ceased in the middle of down, the hands again freezing in mid-air until the word was finished, the second underlining. Finally, the hands returned to rest. End of the second underlining up to the right bracket. The right bracket. The right bracket. The two holds reveal that the downward thrust was targeted precisely at the it down fragment. The downward thrust was withheld until the speech fragment could begin and was maintained despite a lack of movement. Movement.
Movement.
Movement. Until the fragment was completed. Completed. Significantly, even though the gesture depicted downward thrusting, the stroke bypassed the very verb that describes this motion. The very verb that describes this motion. Drops the preparation, continuing right through it and holding at the end. An explanation for this seeming overshoot is provided later. The growth point was thus the fragment, it down, plus the image of a downward thrust, thrust, thrust. Both sides of the growth point are essential and are opposed dialectically in that the linguistic components have combinatoric potential and categorize the image. The imagery component embodies these categories in an instantaneous whole. The different modes are simultaneously active for the speaker and the listener who is trying to recreate the growth point. 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 That one idea exists in two such different modes. In the motive force for the utterance and its linked meaning for formation. Formation, meaning formation. Indeed. 4-2, unpacking, unpacking, unpacking. Let's unpack. Let's go up. The growth point is resolved by unpacking it into a more stable form, a more stable form. With a grammatical construction being the most stable outcome possible. The most stable outcome possible. intuitions of good form, all intuitions hard. The individual's direct perceptual experience of the static structure language arise and are the stop orders for the dialectic, the dialectic, echo, echo. Once the speaker sensed a well-formed construction, she resolved the conflict by distributing the imagery and categorical content of the growth point into its prepared slots, and this stopped the dialectic process. How this might work is illustrated below. 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 In this way, the dynamic intersects the static. As expected by Saussure's double essence insight. Intersects it, in fact, in several ways. In the growth point, in the unpacking, and in the stop order. 3 ways to intersect, 3 connections in the weave. It is not that unpacking invariably reaches a full grammatical construction. 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 It proceeds until some threshold of stability is reached, which may often be less than a complete outcome, or it may just break off in stability if stability proves unattainable in the time spans attainable at socially realistic speech rates. Realistic speech rates. because of an inappropriate construction attempt. Inappropriate construction attempt. What a sentence. Or what a thing to say. Thus, pauses and grammatical approximations rife in daily discourse can be explained as products of the dialectic resolution and the speaker's efforts toward it with limited time spans. Limited time spans. In this example, nonetheless, the groove point smoothly unpacked into a construction. The causative someone drops causes to move by dropping something down, some landmark object. Intuitions one of the caused motion construction arose and became the stop order. The construction plausibly resolving the dialectic by providing slots for the groove point image and its categorical content. Its categorical content. Its categorical content. Its categorical content. Then we have an illustration where we have the divisions, subject, verb, object, object, or oblative. Tweety drops it down. Boldface for the slots that gather the pieces of the growth point. The tweety subject and the verb drops are explained below. Below. for free contexts and fields of oppositions. Oppositions we like. We heard them before. Oh dear. Context is a second source of dynamism. Dynamism, dynamism, dynamism. Theoretically, a growth point is a psychological predicate in Vygotsky's sense, a significant contrast within a specific context, the concept of communicative dynamism, while context reflects the physical, social, and linguistic environment. It is also a mental construction.
Mental construction.
Mental construction. It is indeed. The speaker constructs this representation of context in order to make the intended contrast meaningful within it. Within it. Within it, the growth point is thus not fixed and implies the context from which it is differentiated, which it is differentiated. Finding this context in actual data is an essential part of validating the growth point empirically. The mental construction of the context is modeled as a field of oppositions. What the speaker creates is a field of oppositions to make the psychological predicate differentiable within it. Within it. Within it. What? Why?
Differentiated.
Differentiate. Indeed, they are being differentiated. differentiate. Differentiated. To identify the catchment in the it down case, we look for other gestures. In which the hands are shaped and or moved similarly to the target gesture. Listen up, the target gesture, that it is what is going to the directionality. And see if these gestures comprise a family with thematic continuity. With a thematic continuity. Continuity. We find such a family in the speaker's rendition, similar to two-handed gestures, had to do with a bowling ball and the role of an antagonistic force contra Sylvester. Contra Sylvester.
Contra Sylvester.
Contra Sylvester. The full description. 4-4. The full description. We can thus further specify the it down growth point. It was a psychological predicate differentiating the bowling ball as this antagonistic force. Various antagonistic forces against Sylvester were the field of opposition. The differentiated version was this force in the form of the bowling ball moving downward. Downward.
Down.
Downward move. the growth point and this context provide a richer picture of the speaker's idea unit than a purely referential reading of the phrase drops it down the drain pipe suggests. Ways of thwarting Sylvester, bowling ball, downwards, downwards. Also, we can now explain the timing of the gesture. The downward thrust coincided exactly with a linguistic categorical content with which it formed a growth point, idea unit, or psychological predicate. Psychological predicate.
Predicate.
Psychological predicate. It skipped the verb drops, despite the fact that this verb described the bowling ball's motion down. The bowling ball's motion down. Precisely because the verb does not describe the bowling ball in its role as an antagonistic force. It describes what Tweety did. What Tweety did, not the bowling ball, and thus not the bowling ball.
What we did it, not the bowling ball. What we did it, not the bowling ball.
Not the bowling ball. And thus could not have categorized the image with the intended meaning. With the intended meaning. The speaker's core idea was not dropping, but the idea of the bowling ball moving down as an antagonistic force. Hence, the details of how gesture and speech combine, including timing, can be explained as aspects of the speaker's construction of the psychological predicate of the context, which is to say, her thought process in context. In context. other psychological predicates in the same catchment also conveyed the antagonistic force theme, specifying its effect on the unfortunate Sylvester, how he became a kind of living bowling ball.
Unfortunate Sylvester became a kind of living bowling ball.
Yes. Poor guy. Rolled down a street into a bowling alley and knocked over all the pins.
Hallelujah.
All the pins. What? Each of these can be analyzed in turn as psychological predicates, differentiating further contrasts within the antagonistic field of oppositions. Oppositions. I think antagonistic field of oppositions is an excellent stopping point.
Page 7. Page 7.
Page 7. 1967.
Antagonistic field of oppositions.
Let's have a look-see here. Let's have a look-see here. I'll go for some quotes or sites. No. Go to page 5, if you may, Kalle, please.
Yes, this is page 5.
I'm just going to read something little from page 4 to give you a hint. Okay, yeah, sure. To explain what is a GP, or it's not a general practitioner, which I'm going to attend soon. I'm going to test my hearing. A growth point combines imagery and linguistic categorical content. And the theory is that such a combination initiates cognitive events. So it's a combination of both imagery and linguistic stuff or morphemes. And it's a connection here. A growth point is an empirically recoverable idea unit inferred from speech, gesture, synchrony, and co-expressiveness. I think the helping line here is co-expressiveness. So to speak, we have linearity and holism at the same time. They co-express. And then we can go to page 5. Take around 7 lines down. Beginning with the last paragraph at the very bottom. Sorry, I didn't say that. The last paragraph, unpacking. And 7 lines or 8 lines down. In this way it begins. Why, thank you very much. In this way, the dynamic intersects the static. The dynamic intersects the static. So you have the dynamic and we have the static together as expected by Saussure's double essence insight. So we have some good from Saussure as well. And it intersects it, in fact, in several ways. In the growth point, in the unpacking, and in the stop order. So now we also get a sort of explanation for the stop order, which has been so difficult. We do pause, and the pauses are incredibly important. But as of yet, we have seen them just as decorative units, adding emphasis and some stuff to the essential, what is perceived before Wittgenstein, or whatever you like, the essential in the sign and signified. The contents of the word as bearing meaning by themselves, without a wholeness. If we go to the end, the last sentence. Thus, listen now, pauses and grammatical approximation, rife in daily discourse, are full of them, can be explained as products of the dialectic resolution and the speaker's efforts toward it within limited time spans. So the Tweety Sylvester story is a wholeness, like a melody is a wholeness. It cannot be understood in its parts, as well as it's linear, because Tweety is moving, he does things. He becomes the poor chap, a bowling ball, going down the alley into the bowling alley and knock down some pins. In page 6, here it can be helpful. This is especially the bow face, which are the gathering pieces of the growth point. The ball is down. Directionality is included in the gesticular, taking the hand down, forming a unit of the whole thing that otherwise would look Chomskistic, Chomskyan. They are all together, and meaning is not set apart from form or the performance of speech / gesticulation. And now we come to my favorite part, the next for free context and fields of oppositions. Oppositions. It's all together. One could say one by one and all at once. And you could put a slash in between those two parts of the sentence. I didn't read that, I just came from me. You go about 10 lines down, if you may, please. So the mental construction of the context is modeled as a field of oppositions. What the speaker creates is a field of oppositions to make the psychological predicate differentiable within it. This is a model in which meaning is a relationship. It is a relationship, not a pointer, not a signified, between a point of contrast and the background or field of oppositions from which it is being differentiated. And listen now, not an accumulated substance or essence, I would say also. It grows in the opposition to the gesture, thereby having a relationship within the sentence, within the gesture. So this is, in a way, although we got some pointers for Saussure, this is also a death knell for Saussure. Ferdinand, pauvre. No longer a sentence. It is more Carlo Rovelli quantum relation. It is more in the doing, because and doing is also a sort of opposition. A doing creates oppositions. And it's between a point of contrast and the background or the field oppositions from which it is being differentiated. It's once more in the liminal zone. It's in between the dense Norway coastline and the nothingness of the sea. We go to the next paragraph, if you may, Kalle. In the second part of this, to identify the catchment in the it down case, we look for other gestures in which the hands are shaped and or moved similarly to the target gesture, and see if these gestures comprise a family with thematic continuity. We find such a family in the speaker's rendition, similar two-handed gestures had to do with the bowling ball in the role of an antagonistic force. Contra Sylvester. Contra Sylvester. I will show some illustrations. Just bear with me for a second. see if I can take that video here. It's quite small. I think this is from the book How Language Began. And as in the example, we have here two gestures that creates the opposition. These are not the gestures fitted with Tweety and Sylvester, but it gives you a sense that these are wholeness givers for the whole sense of the whole movement. The gist of the thing is an entire movement, not dividable, and it brings, you could say it's the glue that brings all the pieces of the linguistic together. But it's also the dynamic in contrast to the static. Words being almost like small dots, but they are brought together with a gesture. I'll stop the video there and you can share again. So it's a continuing differentiation. It's always in contrast where this happens, with the negativity of the gesture, but also in concord of the gesture. If you may, could we go to the next page, 7, concluding page, or the end page? And here you can get a sense of drops it down the drain pipe suggests ways of thwarting Sylvester, bowling ball downwards. So it's the downward movement and thwarting at the same time. So that can actually be simultaneously transferred. It doesn't have to be there in parts. No morphemes in that way here. No atomistic idea of the words as being separable or separated. We discussed this much earlier when we looked at how the Greeks and the Romans, when they start making space in between the words, and when we started to have space between the sentences, we got more and more a feeling that words were isolated. And that has been contradicted and argumented against by many philosophers and thinkers. It has also been wholly accepted by, for instance, Noam Chomsky, where there are only small parts. You can also compare it, maybe I can compare it to thea and aletheia, where thea could be the gesture and aletheia the spoken language. And I will start with the third paragraph here, and the small paragraph. Also, we can now explain the timing of the gesture. The downward thrust coincide exactly with the linguistic categorical content with which it formed a growth point. This is the start, idea unit, or a psychological predicate. So this is where it starts, together you get a fertile soul for developing the holistic understanding. And as we see at the end of this paragraph, each of these can be analyzed in turn as psychological predicates, differentiating further contrast with the antagonistic field of oppositions. Some rather complicated words, but they point to an antagonism between your gesture and the words, which is the fertile soil. It's the liminal zone that gives everything. Kalle Lundahl, please, if you have a comment. And please speak directly into the microphone. I'm afraid here the speaker is as it is.
Yes, let's go to page 5, where we have this case study. Did I understand correctly that Tweety Bird is the speaker? Is Tweety Bird the speaker, Hans?
Come again?
Is Tweety Bird the speaker?
No, it's a speaker. He's not present. It's a guy sitting.
Yes, he's the speaker who explains the thing.
Yeah, it's a speaker who explains it's a sketch. Tweety.
Yes, indeed. So we could call Tweety a comedian who speaks about Sylvester.
He speaks about Tweety, which is a little bird, and Sylvester, which is a cat, if I remember correctly.
Okay. I don't know. Okay. So I don't know why he didn't explain this.
No, there should have been some illustrations there. That's probably my fault for choosing this.
I didn't understand anything about it, actually.
Yeah, it's a cat.
I don't know if it has.
It probably choose them, if I take a guess, because they are antagonistic.
Is it this case? The Sylvester cat is...
Oh! You actually found it! Very good. And here even Sylvester, he looks like a bowling pin.
And it's this bird, Tweety, who explains the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, after the fact, so to say.
Yeah, after the fact, yeah. Yeah, good. It's after the fact as well. And
so it's in
theory is always
so,
after the fact.
some time ago, Tweety had this story. Or how is it?
It's rather the guy who's not present. He's not mentioned here. It's a speaker of a classic Tweeter and Sylvester escapade. I'll bring some more illustrations to the next time. I think it's lacking that. You got a point there.
No, it's not easy to follow the explanation at all.
No, I get it. It's still in the mud, so to speak.
Do we have it online? City and Sylvester bowling. So
Oh, there you have it, actually. You found it.
I don't know if it's this one.
That's the one. So what the hand is doing, or the hands, they're both connected. What they do is that they show the directionality where the story is going. So they are helping with the understanding. And the gestures, they are holistic, where the words come part by part. And
But there are no hands in this. The Tweety bird is not even present here.
no, but it's the speaker. He's absent. It's a guy.
Who is this guy?
It's an interview subject.
Who explains this cartoon?
No, yeah, exactly. He explains it. He explains it.
Okay.
And the author is using the explaining process to show how gestures come in. But could we take some more questions next time? I'm off to the hospital here.
Okay, yes, absolutely. Let's end there, Hans.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for this first take on this. Have a very pleasant morning, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Goodbye.